This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Garrett. Brought to you in part by
TheStreet.com. Up-to-the-minute stock market news and in-depth analysis. Our quant rating service provides objective, independent ratings daily on over 4,300 stocks. Learn more at TheStreet.com/NBR.
Not business as usual. GlaxoSmithKline becomes the first major drug company to quit two of the industry's most common and controversial practices, the way it promotes its products and compensates its sales force. Will rival companies follow?
Best medicine? Why some researchers are calling on consumers to toss their vitamins. But what does that mean for the companies that develop and sell health supplements?
And wasteful spending, $300 million on a blimp? Hundreds of thousands creating a cartoon? We have some of the surprising ways Congress is spending your money. We have all that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, December 17th.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Major news affecting two facets of healthcare in America tonight. First, one of the world's biggest drug makers changes in a fundamental way how its products are marketed and ends a decades-long practice in how it compensates its sales force. And second, President Obama, still trying to get the healthcare.gov website working right, calls in tech support, very expensive tech support. He met today at the White House with some A-list executives in technology from Apple, Facebook, and more to get their advice on how to fix that problem-plagued portal.
Well, the big drug maker Tyler just mentioned is GlaxoSmithKline. It's vowing to end Paola to doctors who prescribe and promote its products. So how transformational is this change, and what does it mean for Glaxo? Sarah Eisen has the story.
Glaxo is breaking the mold. The British pharma giant is the first to announce it will stop paying doctors to promote drugs. The producer of top-selling medications Paxil and Flonase and consumer products like Tums and Aquafresh is also changing the way it pays its sales representatives. It will no longer tie their compensation to the number of prescriptions doctors write, rolling out globally a program piloted in the U.S. The company says it's been a competitive advantage because healthcare professionals appreciate the transparency. Glaxo's CEO says in a statement the new changes are designed to bring greater clarity and confidence that whenever we talk to a doctor, nurse, or other prescriber, it is patients' interests that always come first.
There are a lot of good reasons that the industry has used physicians as their advocates. When these things are connected with direct payments, that's when you have the introduction of conflict of interest.
But Glaxo may be also trying to repair its reputation. It's the target of an ongoing corruption investigation in China, where the drug maker is accused of bribing hospitals, doctors, and officials. And last year, Glaxo paid a record $3 billion fine in the United States to settle accusations it marketed drugs for unapproved uses. In the past few years, other drug companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Merck, have paid big fines after being accused of questionable marketing practices. One reason analysts say other companies will follow Glaxo's lead.
Over the next 2 years, I think we're going to see the process by which pharmaceutical companies promote their products through medical education and with the input of physicians will change somewhat.
One big reason, the Affordable Care Act will require drug companies to disclose exactly how much they're paying doctors every year. This could push doctors and pharma companies to accelerate these changes.
Clinical meetings and boondoggles, those have really been cleaned up dramatically over the last, I would say 5 years. And I think the industry is trying to gain the reputation that they should have, which is that they provide tremendous value to society.
Glaxo is taking a big first step. Now pharma watchers are waiting to see which companies will follow. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Sarah Eisen.
Our guest tonight has been very critical of the drug industry's marketing practices over the years. He's Dr. Jerry Avorn, professor of medicine at Brigham and Women's Hospital and at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Avorn, welcome. Good to have you with us. Do you think Glaxo is doing what they're doing because they suddenly got religion or because they got caught?
Well, it's very hard for me to know what their motivations were. I think it is a good step in the right direction in that it's much better for doctors to learn about drugs from some unbiased, non-commercial source of information rather than from a doctor who's being paid by the drug maker to teach them about how good their products are. As to why, hard to know. It's not been a good year for Glaxo, as your report indicated, and maybe they're trying to take the high ground to be in the media for something good that they did instead of something bad that they did.
But Dr. Avorn, isn't it possible also that it just doesn't pay to spend all this money on doctors? Aren't they finding that the business model of marketing has changed, that you can go direct to consumer? You know, we see all these ads on TV now promoting all kinds of drugs. So isn't it more that they can go direct to the consumer?
Well, there's a lot of that going on, and as you know, we are one of only 2 countries on Earth, the other one being New Zealand, that allows direct-to-consumer ads of prescription drugs, and I don't think that's a great step forward, because these are issues that are a little bit too complicated to fit into a 30-second or 1-minute commercial on TV. And to the extent that they're doing that, that may be another way to try to market the drugs. It's probably not the best way to market drugs.
Those ads of prescription drugs are mostly the disclaimers, it seems to me, and less the selling points. How do you have any perspective on how this is likely to affect Glaxo's sales, its revenues?
It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in terms of their sales, because on the one hand, you can probably sell a lot more drug if you completely control the message. If the doctor who's giving the lecture or the continuing education course is being paid by the company, and often, and a lot of people don't know this, the slides and the script and the content of that talk is provided directly by the company as well. And so if you're doing that, you probably can manage to make a better sales pitch than if you are having a doctor who may be independent and is coming to this just as an expert say whatever he or she thinks. That may not be as good for sales, and it'll be interesting to see what effect it has.
Doctor, I understand.
It's better for patients, though. I'm just going to say it's better for patients.
Okay, I was going to ask you that, you know, you've made a career on educating doctors on how best that they can, you know, prescribe medications to their patients. What else would you like to see happen? What other improvements would you like to see happen in terms of transparency and in terms of best practices for patients?
Well, I'd like to see doctors being able to get information about drugs primarily from sources that are not the drug makers. We certainly can afford that, considering what we're paying for drugs in this country, which is way more per capita than any other country. And it would be nice if the kind of work that many groups, including ours, are doing, in which there's folks who are unbiased experts who are able to go out and teach doctors about the evidence behind the drugs without any particular axe to grind. If that was a more widespread practice, instead of having to have doctors rely on company sales reps, whether they are folks who are sales representatives or doctors paid by the company, that's just not the most efficient way for people to learn about what works and what doesn't. So I'm hoping we'll see more of that going forward.
Where do we stand on the question of paid research? In other words, where doctors are paid, where the research is funded by a pharmaceutical company, a medical device company. What is the state of play on that?
Well, I think it's important to make a big distinction between research, the good research that is funded by a company, versus sales or infomercials or dinner events that are funded by a company. We have a model in this country, for better or worse, that a lot of clinical trials are funded by companies. And as long as those trials are well done and rigorous and not set up to get a predetermined result, then that can be a useful contribution. We just need to make sure that those studies are well done and not set up in a way that's just kind of a marketing exercise.
Dr. Jerry Avorn, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Dr.
You're very
Avorn is
welcome.
Professor of Medicine at Brigham's and Women's Hospital and at the Harvard Medical School. Well, the problem-plagued healthcare.gov website is getting some much-needed help. The Obama administration has named Kurt Del Bene, a top executive at Microsoft's Office Division, as a senior advisor to Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius. Del Bene has got a big job ahead of him, of course. He's charged with fixing that health insurance portal with less than a week to go before a deadline for buyers to lock down insurance coverage that could begin on January 1.
Also today, the White House turned to the who's who of technology for some advice on how to repair its health insurance exchange website. But most of that meeting turned out to be focused on the spying scandal and national security and overhauling the way the government conducts surveillance. Eamon Javers joins us now with more on this meeting, who was there, and what, if anything, might have been accomplished. So, Eamon, let's just start off by, what do the CEOs hope the White House will do here?
Well, what the CEOs are telling us is what they would like to see here is the White House and the United States government allow them more transparency, more ability to tell their customers, that is Twitter, Facebook, Google, services that we all use, to tell their customers exactly how often they're turning over information to United States intelligence. Right now, they're not allowed to reveal some details about how often they cooperate with U.S. intelligence. They feel like this would go a long way to alleviating some of the concerns that customers have in the wake of the Edward Snowden disclosures.
That's what the CEOs were looking for. Did the president make any offers? What did he say?
Well, our understanding, Tyler, is that this meeting, which was an unusual one by White House standards, about 2 hours and 45 minutes long with the top figures in global technology. At this meeting, the president more or less took a listen and learn approach. He wanted to hear their ideas for what they would suggest that the White House do here. Of course, the White House is wrapping up an overall review of its intelligence gathering capabilities and just figuring out exactly what changes it wants to make, if any, in the way the NSA gathers information around the world.
Eamon, one thing that was confusing to all of us is we thought that this meeting at the White House was going to be mostly about the healthcare website. And then it turned out that they were talking mostly about this NSA stuff. So, you know, what was all that about?
Well, it was interesting. The White House sort of billed this as a healthcare.gov conversation with maybe some other things tacked on at the bottom. In the end, this was very much an NSA conversation. The CEOs came today to the White House. They wanted to talk about spying by the United States government. The White House really wanted to frame this as a conversation about technology in a larger way. We're told the first 45 minutes of the conversation focused on healthcare.gov and the website and technical issues, but the president didn't come in until after that conversation was over, and then they had 2 hours on the spying issue.
All right, Eamon Javers, thanks very much. Well, on Wall Street, traders were in a sort of holding pattern today, with stocks trading in a narrow range all session long and ending slightly lower ahead of the Federal Reserve's decision on whether to taper its stimulus measures. Let's take a look at how the major averages fared today. The Dow down 9 points, the S&P and the NASDAQ both lower by 5.
More now on that Fed meeting. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke arrived at the nation's central bank in Washington this morning for the start of the final policy meeting of the year. Voting members will decide whether the time is right to begin winding down the Fed's $85 billion a month bond buying stimulus program and just how much tapering the economy and the markets can handle. That decision will be announced tomorrow afternoon.
The Senate is closer to a budget deal. The bipartisan proposal for a 2-year federal budget, which already passed the House last week, cleared a key procedural vote in the Senate today, all but assuring passage in the upper chamber as early as tomorrow.
2013 was a busy year for Wall Street regulators and a lucrative one. The Securities and Exchange Commission filed almost 700 enforcement actions through September of this year. That's a 7% fewer than the year before, as investigations from the financial crisis tail off. But sanctions and settlements from those actions totaled a staggering $3.5 billion. That's 10% more than last year.
The housing market has seen remarkable gains this year, but millions of homeowners are still underwater in real estate. Real estate watcher CoreLogic reports that in the third quarter of this year, there were nearly 6.4 million homes, about 13% of all homes with mortgages, where the homeowner owes his or her bank more than the house is worth. But that's lower than last year, and CoreLogic predicts that number will continue to decline.
But home builders are more confident these days. A new survey from the National Association of Home Builders shows sentiment ticked to a 4-month high in December, and that's thanks by a recent bump in new home sales.
And still ahead, why the best medicine may be ditching your vitamins and eating your peas. Details on a new study and what it could mean for the companies that develop and sell nutritional supplements. AMC Entertainment is expected to price its IPO tonight and begin trading tomorrow. The company hopes to raise more than $350 million. It's expected to trade on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol AMC. Our Julia Borston takes a look at what some investors might find appealing about this company.
Let's get some more.
Movie fans flock to AMC theaters for popcorn and the latest flicks.
but will they want to buy a piece of the company? That's what we'll see when shares of AMC Entertainment Holdings, 80% owned by Chinese entertainment conglomerate Dalian Wanda Group, start trading Wednesday morning.
AMC is the second largest operator in the United States for theaters and screens. It has been around for a while. And has, a solid, large market presence.
AMC has some advantages. It's good at getting its moviegoers to pay more, with the highest average ticket price and highest concession sales of the major chains. And it has more IMAX theaters than its competitors. So how do AMC's financials stack up against its two biggest rivals, Regal and Cinemark? It's the most leveraged with $2.2 billion in debt, and it has the lowest return on invested capital of the group. Now AMC is investing to make its theaters even more appealing with reclining seats with leg rests, dine-in theaters with seat-side food service, as well as bars and lounges.
These are investments that Regal and Cinemark have both been making over the last couple years. AMC has been left behind a little bit, so they have a little bit further runway just because they haven't been able to have access to capital that the other two players have had. So they are starting sort of their investment phase right now.
AMC is hoping its customers will invest in its future, inviting the 2.5 million members of its ticket loyalty program called Stubs to buy as little as $100 worth of shares, fee-free, through a startup called Loyal3.com, which gives individuals access to IPOs. This could be a savvy marketing move for AMC. If customers become shareholders, that could give them reason to be loyal to AMC rather than pick a screening based on schedule and location. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Julia Borston in Los Angeles.
3M is buying back $22 billion of its shares and increasing its dividend by more than a third, and that's where we begin tonight's market focus. The Scotch tape and Post-it note maker will span the repurchase over the next 5 years, and then to top it off, 3M also gave a 2014 outlook that surpasses estimates. Share rose almost 3% to $131.39. Microsoft won't be picking a new CEO until next year. The director in charge of the search for the new leader said Microsoft's board will announce its choice in the early part of 2014. Meanwhile, Steve Ballmer, who's been CEO since 2000, is planning to retire next year. Shares were slightly off to $36.52. If you're a Facebook user, video advertisements are set to appear on your newsfeed starting this week. Facebook is rolling out ads that will play automatically on phones and computers. The move might help the social networking giant take part in the huge TV ad market. Shares of Facebook were up almost 2% to $54.86. AT&T is selling its Connecticut operations to Frontier Communications for $2 billion. The country's biggest phone company said the proceeds from the deal will help expand its 4G LTE network, access to more people, and help grow its internet and video services. The deal won't go through until it's reviewed by regulators. Shares of AT&T were down a fraction to $33.85. Meanwhile, Frontier soared up more than 8.5% to $4.78.
Higher chicken prices and lower chicken feed costs helped Sanderson Farms grow earnings in the company's fourth quarter. The company's profits more than quadrupled. That's no chicken feed, but net income did miss estimates by a lot, and that disappointed investors, which sent shares down 3% to $68.38. Shares of Rockwell Medical plummeted after Breen Capital gave the pharmaceutical company a sell rating. The firm's analyst said he doesn't expect Rockwell's new anemia drug to be approved by the FDA. He also cited stagnant sales and flat future growth as reasons for the poor rating. That'll do it to you. Shares tumbled almost 20%, $10.80 the close there. And Targacept also took a big hit today after the drug developer said it would stop working on an experimental drug. In mid-stage trials, the drug, which was supposed to treat schizophrenia and Alzheimer's disease, didn't meet the company's goals. The stock slumped more than 33.5% to just $3.95.
We have a recall to tell you about. The Consumer Product Safety Commission is recalling the electric chargers for the HP Chromebook number 11 laptop computer. The recall comes after 9 reports of the chargers being prone to overheating and even melting when plugged into the laptops. The manufacturer, Google and Hewlett-Packard, pulled them from store shelves in November.
Well, if you're one of millions of Americans who take a vitamin supplement every day, this could be a tough pill to swallow. A new study shows that vitamin pills may have no benefits to your health and may even pose some risks. So should we toss out all those B12s? And what could this mean for the vitamin industry? Seema Modi has more.
Many Americans take vitamin supplements to compensate for a poor diet and to improve their overall health. But a new study indicates that the theory may be wrong.
I generally don't recommend vitamins. I recommend healthy dietary patterns and regular exercise because it's unnecessary. And even in the setting of poor diet, it doesn't seem to have benefit.
Dr. Miller and other researchers co-wrote a bold editorial in the Annals of Internal Medicine, writing that supplementing a diet of well-nourished adults with most minerals or vitamin supplements has no clear benefit and might even be harmful. For example, researchers found that the beta-carotene increased incidence of lung cancer among high-risk patients like smokers. Vitamins may also not ward off chronic diseases.
I think many people in their mind are thinking that it's an insurance policy against chronic disease, but this is what these studies are showing, that it's not. So you could save your money and maybe buy more fruits, vegetables, low-fat dairy.
GNC Holdings, Nu Skin, Vitacost, Vitamin Shop, and Herbalife all have exposure to the vitamin and supplement industry, which has been growing at a fast rate. Research firm Eurostar expects it to reach $28 billion in sales by 2017. And analysts that I spoke to don't see demand for vitamins decreasing anytime soon. The research team at Goldman Sachs recently wrote that supplements provide consumers a low-cost alternative to traditional health care, and that younger consumers will be a driver of future sales, as this segment of the population is increasingly focused on their physique than in years past. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Seema Modi.
Coming up, $1 million for a bus stop, millions more for crystal stemware. Well, that's how Congress is spending your tax dollars, and why one senator says enough is enough.
This weekend's massive storm, which dumped ice and up to 1.5 feet of snow from Missouri all the way to Maine, kept millions of would-be shoppers out of the country's malls. The Retail Watcher Shopper Track reports that the number of shoppers at the nation's brick-and-mortar stores this past Saturday, get this, plunged nearly 26% from the same day a year ago.
Nearly a third of all Americans will be hitting the roads this holiday season. AAA predicts that almost 95 million people will be traveling at least 50 miles from home between this coming Saturday and New Year's Day. That's more than last year, with 9 out of 10 travelers driving, the rest going by air. And here's something that should help out. Gas prices are lower right now than they were a year ago.
Well, one thing that never appears to head lower is wasteful government spending, and there was plenty of it this past year, highlighted in one senator's annual report of dubious federal outlays called the Wastebook. Hampton Pearson has more.
Calling out Congress for not making the tough choices when it comes to cutting federal spending, Oklahoma Senator Tom Coburn's latest Wastebook highlights $30 billion worth of questionable government spending this year.
My contention is had Congress been focused on doing its job of setting priorities and oversighting and cutting wasteful spending, we could have avoided both a government shutdown and the budget deal that we're now considering, which actually grows the government and raises the burden on the American taxpayer.
The headliner, the Pentagon's decision to leave $7 billion worth of military equipment behind as troops pull out of Afghanistan. There was also the Army's Mega Blimp, a $300 million project halted this year intended for use in Afghanistan, but in 3 years of development, it made one trip lasting 90 minutes over New Jersey. Another $390,000 spent by NASA on the Green Ninja, a cartoon superhero created to motivate kids to take action regarding climate change, in the same year when budget cuts grounded manned space flights for the foreseeable future. Calls to the Pentagon and NASA for comment were not returned, but Coburn says much of the questionable spending is tied to the ability of government contractors to maximize profits at taxpayers' expense.
Until they have capital put at risk, you're never going to have those. They know how to control costs, but they also know how to milk the system. And now there's no penalty for milking the system and no reward for controlling costs.
Senator Coburn unveiled this year's edition of the Wastebook just moments after voting against cutting off debate on the budget bill, because he says Congress simply doesn't have its eye on the ball. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson in Washington.
And finally tonight, after 21 straight drawings without a winner, tonight's jackpot in the Mega Millions lottery could set a U.S. record. Officials say a last-minute buying frenzy could push the prize, now estimated to be at $636 million, much higher. We spoke with some of those lottery ticket buyers asking what they plan to do if they won that much money.
I have one in a gazillion chances, just like everybody else.
It'd be too overwhelming, I think, to win it all.
I'm very blessed, but money-wise, no.
It's nothing like a dream. They say you got to be in it to win it. And I'm in it.
Now, if you're planning tonight's game, good luck. The drawing is at 11 o'clock Eastern time. Tyler, I know you haven't bought your ticket yet, but I just want you to know the odds are 1 in 259 million. Good luck.
All right, I'll take those odds. That's pretty good.
That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Susie Garrett. Thanks for joining us.
And I'm Tyler Matheson. Thanks from me as well. Have a great evening, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Nightly Business Report has been brought to you in part by
TheStreet.com, up-to-the-minute stock market news and in-depth analysis. Our quant rating service provides objective, independent ratings daily on over 4,300 stocks. Learn more at TheStreet.com/NBR.
I'm Susie Garrett with a Nightly Business Report news brief. One of the world's biggest drug makers is shaking up the business. GlaxoSmithKline will no longer pay doctors for promoting and prescribing its products and will end a decades-long practice of compensating sales reps based on how many prescriptions are sold. President Obama met with a who's who of tech industry chief executives today to help fix the healthcare.gov website. On Wall Street, stocks fell slightly as the Federal Reserve began a two-day meeting to decide whether to begin tapering its stimulus measures. The Dow fell 9 points, and NASDAQ and S&P both lost 5 points. And no signs of inflation. Consumer prices were unchanged in November, mostly thanks to falling gas prices. Be sure to tune in to Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.